Welcome back to Finding the Beat. I'm your host, Larry Moskowitz, and today we're diving into a topic that is changing the way leaders, business owners, and professionals think about the future: artificial intelligence, AI. My guest today is John Michael Thomas, author of Lead AI with Confidence. John helps leaders cut through the noise, understand what AI really means for their business, and use it as a tool for better decision-making, stronger systems, and smarter growth. AI can feel overwhelming, especially when everyone is talking about it, but not everyone knows how to use it responsibly. So today, we're going to talk about leadership, trust, innovation, and how to embrace new technology without losing the human side of business. John, welcome to Finding the Beat. What problem are you helping leaders solve right now?
Right now, I'm helping leaders solve the problem of figuring out how to get value from AI. Not just using it, but actually helping the bottom line, right? Helping you actually improve your company.
Now, for all of us novices, I went to a seminar like 3 years ago, and this Israeli brainiac got up on the stage and was telling us what was coming, and we had no idea. There were a couple hundred people in the room, what he was even talking about. And then now I'm finding out that people have been working on AI for many, many years behind the scenes. Uh, what led you to AI, and how did you get involved in AI?
Well, I mean, I originally got involved in AI a little bit back in 2008, 2009. I was working on federal government projects for the company I was working with, and I basically was trying to open up the market for our company into the federal government. And one of the things that I worked on was a system to detect chemical, biological, and radiological attacks inside of buildings, which is a really hard problem, by the way, because inside of buildings, it's pretty dirty. So it's pretty hard to tease out what that is. And we did come up with a system. We came up with a proof of concept. And I looked at a bunch of methods, and I was looking at machine learning as a way to make the system work better. And that project got shelved because I got pulled back in to solve another emergency. And that really just kind of comes back to what got me back into AI now is that if I have a superpower, it's that I'm really good at solving problems. And particularly, I tend to get pulled into problems after other people have failed to solve them or when they're critical. And when I left my last job in early 2026, I started a consultancy. I said, hey, I'm gonna go help people solve problems. And what I found was that when I talked to leaders, and I talked to over 100 leaders and worked with different leaders, I said, what's your biggest problem? And everybody was saying the same thing. They were all saying it's AI. And I actually wrote a book on how to solve problems, how to solve almost any problem, even one you know nothing about. And when I was talking to people about the book, my publisher said, go talk to people, make sure they want it. Nobody was really interested in that book. But when I said there was a chapter in AI, everybody said, oh, tell me about that. And so I said, okay. Well, actually, back in 2023, late 2022, early 2023, at the last full-time job I was working at, I was the one that basically created the company AI strategy and drove building AI into our products very early when people didn't know what LLMs were, large language models for those who are novices. And when we talk about AI nowadays, most of the time people are talking about large language models. But I was the one that drove that into the company. So I already had 2.5 years of experience doing that. And so I said, okay, I'm going to help leaders figure out how to do this. And because one of the reasons is when I got into AI, there's a lot of hype. Okay, there's still a ton of hype about AI. People think it can do everything. They think it's smarter than the smartest human. The reality is AI is a tool that's really good at certain things, and it's pretty bad at other things. And so what I found when I talked to leaders is they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what the next step was. They didn't know what it could do, what it couldn't do. So I said, okay, I'm going to help leaders, and I'm going to talk to people about how to do that, and not to, people talked a lot about prompt engineering and this other stuff. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. One of the biggest failure modes in every technology transformation ever has been trying to get non-technical people to learn technical skills. And it's just, I'm like, this is repeating. And I said, you don't need to do that, because if you're a leader, getting AI into your organization, making value out of it, it's not a technology problem. It's actually a leadership problem. And so that's how I got into it. I started working with people, and then I wrote a second book, which is how to lead AI. And it's about doing it not to be a tech guru, to not have to learn all these technical skills, but 90% of what you need to do to lead AI is just leadership. You already know it. And I work with my clients, and one of the first things I tell every one of them is, 80% of what I tell you, what I guide you to do, is not going to be about AI at all. It's going to be leadership. And I'm going to say it, and you're going to say, "Oh yeah, I guess I knew that already," right? Because it's just that we all get bamboozled, but there's so much hype, and it's this new thing, and we don't know what it is. And sometimes we forget the basics that, when you use an AI, you're delegating. That's really what's happening. And so when you understand that, all those skills that you as a manager have, you've been building skills for your whole career. You probably have too, right? You work with people, you're delegating, and you need to understand, once you understand what that means, it translates again, 90% of that translates to AI, and then you need to learn a few little skills on top.
What do you
So
think people are getting wrong about AI right now?
the biggest thing people are getting wrong is that they are racing to use AI without racing to solve a problem, right? So uh, there's there's so much hype and there's so many people saying, "Hey, we're using AI and we're getting all this value out of it," which, by the way, the surveys show is not necessarily really true. But they're not saying what problem are we solving, and they're not saying is the solution we just came up with AI better than what it was when we had humans doing the work. They're not necessarily asking those questions, and part of it is that people don't know enough. I mean, you're old enough, you went through the internet, right? The
Yes,
dot
I do.
com boom and bust, right? And you probably remember they used to say, it's the new economy. All right, it changes everything about business. Well, at the end of the day, after we went through the boom and bust, everybody realized it didn't change business, didn't change the fundamentals of business at all. It gave you a new distribution method, a new way to recruit people, right? So it gave you a new channel. And people are making some of the same mistakes with AI, and they think it's changing everything, but it's not. The fundamentals of business are the same. If you can't solve a problem in your business with AI and make more money or free up your best people to do more work, why are you doing it? Right? It's not helping your business, and that's the biggest mistake. Is people look at it as, it's shiny object syndrome. This is the latest thing, so they need to be in it, but they're not approaching that in a way that they can actually learn what they need to improve their business, improve their organization.
And what type of businesses are you working with?
I mostly work with enterprise software companies because that's my biggest experience. But I've worked with companies doing AI companies. I've got one customer that is doing data centers, so it's hardware. I've worked with, a couple manufacturers. So it really depends on where people are. The closer you get to physical manufacturing, the more careful you need to be about thinking AI is going to solve your problems. And that makes sense, right? Because if you're working on software, that's, a lot of that work is knowledge work. So the less knowledge work you have, if you're a plumber and you're looking to AI to change your business, that's probably not going to help you much. But if you have a software business, you have a lot more opportunities in there.
So we're in the legal profession, as you know,
Hmm.
and literally I am getting inundated daily with marketing companies. Now there's a segment of, programs that are designed for law firms, right?
Yeah,
And they're all selling us like the CRMs, like the database companies.
yeah,
And for a small law firm, boutique law firm, I don't know what to do. I don't know what is going to solve my problem or problems. What are our problems? I've got 2,000 emails in my inbox. I've got two accounting firms. One accounting firm does my reconciling of my books, and then the other one does the actual year-end accounting. They
yeah,
don't want to reconcile it because they charge me too much. We've got to go through our credit cards because now every business that we deal with requires an ACH on a credit card. There's no more checks anymore. So now our credit cards are basically our accounting. So now we've got credit cards and ACHs instead of checks, which we used to do 15 years ago. I've got a
yeah.
whole list of things um, that I think can be solved by AI. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. We do a lot of marketing, and I see some of the other law firms are either using outsourcing of humans, call it, maybe India, the Philippines, what have you, and now they're starting to use AI. Do I think that is a good use of AI? Personally, I have an opinion on that, whether or not AI should be deployed to be taking in intakes on first customer contacts, client contacts. What is your opinion on, say, a small business owner who really, right now, I would say most small business owners are just starting to see that Claude can rewrite their uh, email, can rewrite their letter, maybe have figured out how to maybe connect it to their QuickBooks, maybe not. Um, I've got friends that run billion-dollar companies that have hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars that they're spending on AI. What about that guy that really has nowhere to turn to? Are you that guy that I pick up the phone and say, "Hey, John Michael, Thomas, I've got this list of things here: credit cards, bookkeeping, answering telephones, legal work. How about that, right?"
Yeah,
There's been a lot of challenges regarding legal work, how things are
yeah,
changing in the legal environment, how judges are now mandating, the Supreme Court of Florida is mandating that you
yeah.
put on your ledger that you used AI in your research. Um,
A lot of sanctions
well,
too for attorneys.
a lot of sanctions,
Yeah.
fake cases being thrown out there.
Hmm.
So we're in that infancy right now, and you know, what do you say to that? To that, it doesn't have to be a law firm; it could be any small business owner at
Yeah.
this point.
Well, I mean, the number one thing that I do is I help leaders figure out what should I do next, right? And so the number one thing I start with is what is your biggest problem? And if you've got three, that's fine, but come up with a list. What are your biggest problems? And then we go through those and we say, okay, is AI going to be able to help with this? Well, is it a problem that requires judgment? AI is probably not a good choice for that. Is it a problem that's repetitive and that you can use some kind of a rubric or scoring, to figure out whether how that's done, right? Is it something that's tedious for a human to do? AI is often a good choice for that. Whereas if it's something that really requires, and law is the perfect case, right, where just because an AI can read the law doesn't mean AI understands the nuances, right? It doesn't necessarily understand, you know, it'll make up citations, but even if it's a real citation, is it even appropriate for the brief? Is it quoting something, did it get a real citation and make up the quote? Does it support the brief and all these things? These are things that take judgment and they take experience. And that's something that AI is really not very good for to do the final work. But there are some systems out there, and by the way, for legal, I would recommend if you've looked for legal in AI at all, I'd recommend looking at up Iris, IRYS. That's the best legal AI that I know of. I have talked with quite a few attorneys about using AI in legal. It's just not an area that I specialize in, but I do understand a lot of the issues in that. And so for a small business owner, the question is, what are your biggest problems? And then let's go through those one by one, and let's also understand where you are. So I say, there's 6 stages of AI adoption. There's awareness, it's out there, it might help your business, but you're not sure how. There's experimentation where you and your team, you have to figure out what AI can actually do. And I can tell you all day what AI is good at and not. But until you actually experience it, you're not going to really quite get that. And so you go through that. Then you get to adoption. This is where you're actually using AI somewhere, right? Something in daily work or in something that you repeat, you're actually using it. Then you get to value. This is a question people get too late, and that's when I was talking about with the biggest problem with the biggest mistake people make. It's they ask the value question too late, right? The value says, is all this work getting us anything, right? So if you decided you wanted to use AI in legal and you wanted to, let's say, review a brief and point out highlights to you so you can go through that faster, you're going to have to ask yourself, is that helping me, or does that just give me more review time where I've got to make sure it got it right? Right. So you have to ask those questions. Then you get to where it's transformation, where you're building it into the whole organization. And then eventually we will get to what I call stage 6, which is just the way things are. And I don't know of anybody that's there yet. Everybody's still figuring out AI, and this includes the big guys. This includes the people making it. But I know that we will get there because, like I said, you and I went through the internet transition. When the internet first broke, right? Everybody was like, there were chief internet officers. Do you see any chief internet officers now? I don't. People got excited. Oh, I used the internet today. Do you hear people get excited about using the internet today? No. Right. And so we will get there with AI. We're just not there yet. And so I work with leaders and I say, hey, let's figure out where you are. And that's a simple question. And it's a little bit more complex because if you go, especially in large organizations, it's not one answer. You've got different teams and they're at different levels. And by the way, the legal team in large organizations, they are typically very resistant to work on AI for very good reasons, right? Because legal has much stricter requirements than almost everybody else's work. And so, we just go through that step by step. And I have, I've got, I call it the 3x2 implementation roadmap, which is basically says, it's 3 phases. And each phase you break down, there's the strategic part where you're going to set up your plan or whatever, and then there's the execution. And one of the reasons this is important is to separate those, is because a lot of leaders don't understand how hands-on they need to be. People are telling them you need to use it, and so some will they'll overmanage, right? They'll get in there and they'll micromanage it. They think they need to know everything, and others will step back and they'll just delegate it. They'll say, okay, you're the CIO, I want you to take care of AI. But if AI is really going to reach into every part of your business, if you're just delegating it to somebody, you just delegated the whole business, right? So it's a matter of understanding, okay, we take it a phase at a time and say, what's the strategy we need to do? How do we need to prepare? And then we can delegate the execution, right? If you're a leader, you can delegate the execution as long as you know what you're delegating and what you're not. So it's a simple answer, but it's a complex answer. When I come in as a fractional chief AI officer, I help run that. When I come in just as a consultant, I'm basically helping CEOs step forward and say, okay, what's your next step? What's the next best step for you so that we can keep moving you forward and get you to the point where you're actually getting value, that fourth step in the
Let's talk
stages.
about this for a minute, John. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm a businessman, and I'm just being in the vernacular here. I'm a
yeah,
businessman, and I'm sitting at my desk today, and my office staff is using chat, they're using Claude, and they're basically using it in a very germane way. They're doing emails maybe, and I know that I need to hit some points in my business. And who's the first call that I make? Is it to a John Michael Thomas? Is it, I'm getting these salespeople that are telling me, well, this will do this for you, this will do that for you. Uh, I'm sure that, 9 out of 10 lawyers that are sitting in the chair that I sit in with most of us law firms are small, believe it or not. I think
yeah,
90% of all lawyers are sole practitioners. We're not, we're about 10 people. But let's assume that, I'm sitting here today and I've got this list of things. One of the biggest complaints of law firm owners is that we spend 95% of our time running the business and only
yeah,
5% of actually being lawyers. Now, some of those lawyers like that position to be in and don't really want to be practicing the law and want to be in
yeah,
the business. But
yeah,
even if they are in the business, they want to run the business, not that have the business running them, right?
yeah,
And how does AI help them do that so that they can actually be a CEO versus an employee, right? Uh,
yeah.
so, so getting back to my question, which is getting kind of long now, here I am sitting here, and I want to investigate how AI can help my business. Who's my first phone call?
I'm going to say there's a little difference here because it depends on who you are, right? So if you're mildly technical or interested in technology, the leaders that already have that desire, it's best to like start using AI yourself, and that just means using it as what I call for amplification, using it as an assistant. Start asking questions, see what you get back. Because if you don't have that grounding, it's going to be hard to understand what somebody like me or says or what anything else you read. The second thing would be to say, uh, people will tell you to get training, and I think that's true, but a lot of what I tell people to do is not to get technology training, but make sure that you understand management training,
So I
delegation.
shouldn't sign up for the 60 prompts, the 60 best prompts for Claude
The
tomorrow.
the chance that you get anything valuable out of that isn't quite zero, but it's pretty close.
Pretty close to zero,
It's
right?
pretty close. And if you understand the technology, those prompts are valuable because you will understand how to change them as it's required. But if you don't understand, if you haven't used it enough to understand what the prompts are doing, they will stop working at some point. And even if they work great, they're going to give you some answers that aren't great sometimes. And so you need to have that foundation. And one of the first things I do with leaders is I say, okay, sit me down with your team, whoever runs your different functions. And if it's a small business, it may just be you, and we're going to go through and I'm going to help you understand how to use AI. And typically that takes 1 to 2 hours. I'm going to show you how to use AI and get really effective with it, because I'm going to show you how to treat AI like a human and delegate it to it like you do to a human. And that comes down to things like understanding, a prompt that you get from somebody, that's like, a block of code. And if you don't understand the code, good luck changing it when you need to do something different. But when I say, hey, this is delegation, and I'm going to teach you how to delegate, it becomes something that you can change, because now okay, first of all, should I be asking AI or should I be asking a human, right? Who's the specialist I'm going to talk to? What's the context? Why? So like I have managed a lot of people, and I found early in my career, my management career, that when I just give somebody a task, I don't know what's going to come out. But if I tell them why we're doing it and I give them context, and then I tell them here's the task, and then I have to narrow it for them. I have to say, here's what I want you to focus on, here's what I don't want you to focus on. Now, when we get something back, it's a lot closer to what I need. Now I can evaluate it and I can say, okay, let's change this, or this didn't quite hit. And then you start with a small task and you expand. And that thing, I call it scope. It's a framework. It's really simple to remember. It helps with both managing humans and AI, right? And if you use that, you don't need to learn prompt engineering. You don't need to learn the 60 prompts and try to go figure and pull which one's going to work and then wonder what you do when you need the 61st that you don't have. You can say, okay, if I was working with a human, how am I going to do that?
So in your book, AI with Confidence,
Lead AI with confidence. Yeah.
I'm sorry, lead AI with confidence.
Yeah.
Uh, is that something that just came out?
It isn't actually out yet. It's I hit #1 bestseller in pre-release, and it's scheduled to be out in November, although I'm hoping to get it out earlier.
And who should buy that?
Leaders. So
Everyone,
if you, well, no, not everyone, not
okay.
everyone.
Okay.
It's specifically for leaders, because it's not about, hey, here's how you use AI. It covers that, but it covers that from a leadership perspective, understanding when you need to use it, when you need to delegate to a human, right? When do you delegate to AI? Understanding the risks. And I mean, particularly if you're an attorney, you understand this. There's a lot of potential risks. There's legal risks, there's operational risks, there's strategic risks, meaning, okay, you put all your money into AI and now you don't have the money to actually implement the things you need for your corporate strategy that you set in January, right? So there's a lot of risks, and you need to understand at least what the categories of risk are. And so it's about looking at AI from a management perspective, understanding how, where you are in the different stages and how to move forward in that. So it's for leaders, CEOs, presidents, who's going to be doing the execution, people that lead functions, CXOs of various different types. But for smaller organizations, you may not have the title. If you are responsible for a team and you want to figure out how to lead AI and get more value from your team with AI, that's who it's for.
And how does someone find the book?
On Amazon. Go on
And
Amazon, look for Lead AI with Confidence. You'll see it there. Like I said, it's in pre-release, so you can pre-order it now, and it won't cost you a thing to pre-order it. It'll only cost you when it comes out, and it's pretty cheap right now. It'll be inexpensive until the actual book comes out.
in your fractional AI officer and your other consulting business, let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. You
So,
want me to talk about it, or you want to ask me a question about it?
well, I'm familiar with, fractional CFOs and
Yeah.
fractional. Uh, this seems to be like a new genre because AI is new, right?
Yeah.
So a company is interested in getting involved in. I think every company is interested in getting involved in AI.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the resources to hire someone full time. Would that be fair? They can
Yeah.
reach out to someone like yourself and have someone come in, and I'll let you take it from here. Either be a consultant on a part-time
Yeah.
basis or be a fractional AI officer of the company.
Yeah, and I mean, it works very much like other fractionals in that, if you're hiring a fractional CMO or a CTO, they're not going to be there full time, but you're bringing them on to help set the strategy, set the plan, and then drive it. And that's what I do as a fractional. Is I'll come in, I'll set it, I'll work with the rest of your C-suite and say, hey, let's figure out, let's get this all set up. Let's get you a strategy that's going to work, and let's get you all trained. And by the way, I always start with the leadership and training them and getting them on board. And then, one of the other mistakes people make is they try to train everybody on AI and expect something to change. That doesn't work. I will tell you things like we're gonna set up something which is called a community of practice. And we're going to take some of the people who have been in your business a long time. They know it. They have authority. So there's these steps that we'll go through. And yeah, they would come to me as a fractional, but a fractional for smaller companies, a fractional is even too much of an investment. And so I also work as a strategic advisor where I will meet with the CEO or with the leader once a week and say, okay, let's figure out where you are. Here's what to do next, right? Here's your next steps. And then, next week you'll have those next steps. We'll figure out what worked and what didn't, and then we'll take the next steps, right? So, as a fractional, I'm taking on the role, right? I'm taking on the responsibility and building the plan and working with the team to make sure that it works for everybody. As a strategic advisor, I'm hidden. In fact, you don't have to tell anybody that you're working with me or with somebody like me. The leader becomes the champion, and I'm just helping you to figure out where you are, what your next steps are, so that you're not going blind and you're not trying to rely on the hype or, I mean, there's literally thousands and thousands of posts about AI a day, right? If you look at all the different platforms, how can you possibly figure out what to listen to and what not to listen to? Well, that's my job, is I look at that all the time. And by the way, it's more than anybody can keep up with, even me. But I've curated the right sources so that, I essentially have a team of people I don't pay, right, who help me figure out where the important things are. And I'll also teach you things like, I call it strategic ignorance. So you don't have to know everything about AI. You don't have to follow all the developments. You look at things, what's going to affect the bottom line this week? If it's not going to affect the bottom line this week, kick it off and we'll look at that again later, right? Because I guarantee you, if something's going to hit your bottom line hard tomorrow, it's okay that you kicked it off a month ago because it's going to come back, right? So, and I'm trying to think, if you are a large company, it makes sense to have someone that's in charge of AI full time. So if you are a Fortune 500 company and you don't have somebody who's responsible for AI at this point, you're probably going to have a problem. But I don't know of any that are like that. If you are a mid-sized company up to 50 million revenue, for example, 5 to 50 million revenue, a fractional makes a lot of sense. And if you're below 5 million revenue, I don't know that you're going to get value out of a fractional because that's a larger commitment. So understand where you are and what you're trying to do, and it's okay to start with somebody who's advising you. And matter of fact, I often recommend people, you may not want to hire a fractional immediately. Start with them as an advisor. Make sure it's somebody you can work with. Make sure that they know what they're talking about, and then you can bump it up anytime that makes sense.
Sure. What is the one AI myth you wish would go away?
That AI can replace humans. And I wish that myth would go away. I mean, there's a moral side of that, which is great, but I wish that would go away because that's a business unreality. AI cannot replace humans, and I often talk about there's two sides of AI, and it gets very confusing because a lot of people don't distinguish. But there's AI for amplification where you're helping humans do their work, more work, do it better, do it faster, and avoid the drudgery. And there's AI for automation, and that's where you're looking to replace humans completely. A lot of the talk about AI right now, a lot of the myth is, hey, we're going to replace humans. And you'll see layoffs. They laid off thousands of people. What you don't hear in the press is when they rehire those people back in 1 to 2 months, and it happens all the time because AI can't fully replace humans. AI is very good at certain things, and it can help humans avoid drudgery and do better work with a lot of things. Like, I use it all the time to check my work. I'm like, okay, I will write things, and then I will ask AI, tell me what I missed. And it finds things all the time, and I think I'm a pretty good writer, but trying to get AI to write it for you means you just decided that you're going to sound just like everybody else. Is that really what you want? And this is true for marketing too. Do you really want your marketing to sound just like everybody else? If not, you probably need a human in there.
So the hype where, all these estimates of how many people are going to lose their jobs and, the future is bleak and yeah, we're going to be able to do wonderful things in medicine, but people are going to be out of work and the world is going to burn in hell because no one's going to have jobs. Is that a myth that you wish would go away?
There will be displacement like there is with any technology transformation, but it's going to be a lot slower rolling because the current technology we have, it can't replace a whole human. It can replace, for most jobs, it can replace at most 10 to 20% of a human. Um, and we will have other technologies coming later. So part of the thing to understand is we have one technology now, which is what's changing the world. It's called large language models. But we're kind of hitting a peak of what the large language models can do, which is actually good because it means there's more investment now in some of the other options that will allow us to do more. And it's not going to displace a bunch of jobs immediately. What will happen is it will displace some jobs over time. And what it really does, it doesn't replace the best people on your team cannot be replaced, not by AI, probably not ever. The people who are just coasting, they may be replaceable. And that was true though before AI. It was anybody that can be fully replaced with AI now probably could have been replaced with another hire of a human before AI. You just didn't have the impetus to do it. So I'm going to give you an example because this a few months ago, back in February, I think it was January, February, they were talking about what's called the SaaS apocalypse. And that is where everybody thought that AI was going to replace software because now everybody can vibe code. They can just go create their own software. Well, you don't hear anybody talking about that anymore. And by the way, I told people, hey, that's not going to happen. I've been building software my whole career, which is more decades than I want to admit. And there's no way that AI is going to be able to replace the human judgment that goes into making software that actually works well and that can scale and all these other things. So that was a prediction. It caused a crash in software companies across the markets, and it didn't come true. And not only did it not come true, but investment in software is still going up. So we need to take all these predictions with a grain of salt because a lot of them, by the way, if you think about it, who they came from, Dario Amodei, came from Sam Altman. They might have a stake in telling you something that will boost their stock share, right, or their IPO price. So it's important to take that with a grain of salt and look at people who've been in the space. Go talk to a machine learning. If you think, oh my God, AI is going to take the jobs, go talk to somebody who's been in machine learning. Just go ask an engineer, hey, can I ask you a question? And most of them are going to tell you, yeah, AI is not there, and it's not going to be there anytime soon because the technology we have is maxing out in what it can do. And we don't know what's going to get us further. We know there's others that may get us there, but we aren't even in the point whether we know they will. So we're going to have some time to adjust. Yes, there's going to be disruption. There was disruption with the internet too, right? There's a lot
Sure.
of jobs, right, that did not exist before the internet, or that existed before the internet that don't exist now.
Sure. So the
So
show's called Finding the Beat. And what does that mean to you in business and leadership?
I think finding the beat has a lot to do with knowing to some extent that you don't really necessarily know where you're going to end up. I started life as a software engineer who did not like people much. And, I liked dogs and computers and I didn't like people very much. And because and the interesting thing is, I
Do
trained
you
in the
like them
martial
now?
arts. I do, I do, but it took some learning for me, and a lot of that was learning where I got thrown into situations I never would have chosen for myself. I was working for a company, a small company, and because I was good at software engineering, I got sent to solve software problems out in the field, and out in the field means out in countries where and locations in those countries, industrial parks where people didn't speak English, and I didn't know the language, and I just had to go figure out how to solve the problem. So I grew in the field from a software engineer to a systems engineer to an everything engineer because when I got in the field, I found out that the problems about 80% of the software problems I got sent to solve weren't software problems at all. a lot of them were hardware problems. And then as I got sent out to more things and I got better at it, um, a lot of them had nothing to do with technology at all. They were political problems inside the customer. They were salespeople selling things that our system just didn't do. We had a couple cases where competitors actually sabotaged our installations. And so, I ended up being a problem solver, not because I started my career and said, hey, I want to become a great problem solver. I ended up becoming a problem solver because I got sent out and that was my only choice. And, the company I worked with, we had a motto, this was from early in the company history, don't come home without it. And that meant, I embraced that, which meant when I got sent out for 3 days to Malaysia, Petaling Jaya, Malaysia, which is a suburb of Kuala Lumpur, I went out for 3 days to solve a problem, and I came back 4 months later because that's what it took to solve the problem. And in doing that, I got very good at solving problems. And then when I got tired of flying around the world solving the problems myself, I figured out how to get good at teaching other people to solve problems because, I was gone 70% of the time and, bouncing around for a few weeks here, a few weeks there. I didn't have time to settle down in a place or, go sightseeing. I'm a terrible tourist anyways. But I did not pick that path for me. But when the path was presented to me, I took it. And I found that I was really good at this thing that I didn't know I could try to be good at. And that really defined my career. And because I was the guy that solved problems, I didn't get stuck in just a software career. I started to get pulled into management where I was pulled in to take care of sales, open new markets, take care of marketing, take care of, all these different things. And I became the turnaround guy, turnaround service, turnaround support, build up new departments. I never thought of that when I was a software engineer, but I fell into that and became good at it because I was open to doing things that were presented to me and taking those opportunities and saying, yes, I'll take responsibility for this. So I think a lot of finding the beat is being willing to take responsibility for something that you don't actually know yet. And by the way, that ties back to AI as well, right? And leading with AI is if you're willing to take responsibility, you got to know it a little bit. You're going to do very differently than if you say, hey, and I've heard this from people. I'm not dumping on anybody. I've actually heard this comment is, hey, I've got 5 years before I retire. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna get past this the best I can. That's very different than somebody who says, I need to learn this. Even when I'm retired, I need to know it. So take what comes in front of you and do your best, and you're gonna find something that you're really good at and that you love that you didn't know existed.
So you found something out about yourself that you didn't know existed.
Absolutely,
Anything
absolutely.
else that you found about yourself that you didn't know existed in your path?
Well, I mean, like I said, I found that I really like people. But I'm an introvert. I'm still an introvert, not an extrovert. And that means that, if you get me in a room with 100 people, I don't want to go talk to 100 people for 5 minutes. I want to go and find one or two people and have a 15, 20, 30-minute conversation. And then I want to know them afterwards, right? So I've learned that my reluctance to work with people was because I don't like shallow relationships. I like deep relationships. And so that was actually really important for me to understand how to work with people and to be able to then, now when I hire somebody, I'm not just hiring an employee. I'm hiring somebody that I want to be able to mentor and I want to be able to help them with their career. I want to be able to have a longer relationship. That was really important for me actually in my career.
And that's a great perspective to have. So I got this at a gift giving thing a long time ago, just to wrap up our session here. And I didn't think much of it, but it's turned out to be a little thing that I do on my podcast where I just pick out a card and randomly ask a question. It's been kind of fun.
All
Uh,
right.
what are you a control? What are you a control freak about?
Okay. Um, I'm a control freak about, and this is going to sound a little funny, but it has broader implications. I want things to be um, in the same place, right? So like, I've got a kitchen, my wife and I, we share the kitchen, and I told her, I don't care where you put anything. I just want to make sure that when I'm ready to cook, I know where things are, so don't move them around. And so, and that's it's a little emotional, but also it's very practical because when I love to cook. When I go into the kitchen, I don't want to have to spend, a bunch of minutes going finding where things are and say, no, I know where things are. I'm going to turn on the pan the minute I walk in the kitchen and I'm going to start going. And if I got to spend minutes looking for something, then something may burn, right? So, but I'm that way about everything in that I don't really care of how things are structured, but once you've got a structure, everything works better for everybody if it stays that way. And if you're going to change it, let people know, right? So I'm a bit of a control freak about that.
So your garage is very neat.
Well, it may not be neat, but everything's always in the same place.
There you go. Would you hope that everybody or nobody remembers your birthday?
Nobody.
I would agree.
Nobody. I prefer not to celebrate my birthday. And unfortunately, that makes me sometimes bad at remembering other people's birthdays. But I try to celebrate other people, and I like to fade into the background, which by the way makes it a little hard to be a consultant where I've got to be out and doing content and stuff regularly. But that's what I actually prefer.
Are you a better talker or listener?
Um, it depends on whether I'm nervous or not. Um, I do like to listen to people, but if I'm uncomfortable, I tend to talk more, or I will just walk away. So
So if
depends a
people
little bit.
want to find you, where is the best or how is the best way that they can find you and engage you if they want to follow up after this podcast and maybe read the book or employ you for your services? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the simplest thing is to go find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is, IN/John Michael Thomas, JohnMichaelThomas. Make sure you get all the H's in the right place there, three names with H's. I do have a site as well, which is johnmichaelthomas.ai. But I will say that most people contact me via LinkedIn, and then we can have a conversation, talk a little bit and see. And by the way, I would say about 60 or 70% of the people that contact me, I tell them I'm not really a good fit for them. But if you want to talk to me, I will tell you whether I think I'm a good fit or not, and I can also refer you to other people that I think might be a better job. So, for example, if you're in manufacturing, if you are in the legal profession, I know people who specialize in helping legal teams adopt AI and legal practices adopt AI. And I would much rather point you to somebody who does that all day, every day, than try to figure that out for you working with you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, John. It's been a pleasure. Really
Yeah,
very enlightening, and I'm sure there are so many people out there that have so many questions about AI on every level, from sole practitioners, small businesses, to middle sized to
yeah,
large companies. We're all trying to to learn this as if this was the first day that we had a dial-up and AOL. We found out that
yeah,
AOL existed. It's
yeah.
been a pleasure. Have a
It's been a
wonderful day.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for having
Let's
me
keep
on,
in
Larry.
touch.
And yeah, definitely. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Take care. John, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such an important conversation because AI is not just about technology. It's about leadership, confidence, and knowing how to adapt when the world around us is changing fast. I think the big takeaway is that AI should not replace human judgment. It should support better decisions, stronger communication, and more intentional leadership. To everyone listening, whether you're a business owner, a professional, or just someone trying to keep up with where the world is going, don't let AI intimidate you. Start small, stay curious, and remember that the strongest leaders are the ones willing to learn. Thank you again, John, for sharing your insight with us. And our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Finding the Beat. We'll